Of all the characters that you will create for your story, the minor character is the least important. You might be wondering why even create a character that's so unimportant. That's because they're not unimportant. On the contrary, they are very much valued members of your story, just not as important as any of the other characters. Look at it from this point of view. Take an army, for example. On the battlefield, in order of most important to least important, it consists of a colonel, a lieutenant, a sergeant, and several corporals. Now, although the lowest ranked corporals are the least important in terms of rank, they are still very much important to the success of this army. Minor characters are no different. Their importance may be far from that of the protagonist, but very much a crucial part of your story. So, what is their function? Time for another of my little tales. Once there was a face that began experiencing a great deal of internal conflict. While they were out on a camping trip with the one they serve, several of the major features of the face began arguing about which of them the face could not do without. They decided to hold a tribunal to determine which of the features were the most needed. First, the eyes claimed that they were most important because the one that they serve travels a great deal and would no longer be able to if he couldn't see where he was going. Then the nose claimed that it was the most important because without the nose, there would be no way of taking in the necessary amount of air to keep the lungs working. Then the mouth claimed that it was by far the most important because not only was it responsible for chewing and swallowing the food to sustain the one they serve, but it also has, on occasion, taken over the breathing duties of the nose when it wasn't able to. They argued about this for the remainder of the day, each presenting evidence to support their claim. And just when it seemed that they were not going to be able to come to a decision, another feature of the face decided to make a claim. The skin exclaimed it was the most important. The eyes, the nose, and the mouth all began laughing, so much so it shook the entire face. The ears that had been listening intently asked the skin, I have heard all that the other features of the face have had to say, and now I'm curious to know, being just the skin, how could you possibly think you could be the most important? Today, I will talk about the minor characters' essential role in the makeup of your story and how your story won't get too far without them. Then, at the end of this video, I'll tell you how the skin proved its importance. What is the function of the minor character? To put it as straightforward as possible, like every other character in your story, they have one function, and that is to aid your protagonist in moving your story forward. But unlike your secondary characters, they don't stick around for very long. Instead of hanging around with your protagonist like a best friend or a love interest or anyone that has a considerable amount of interaction with him, your minor characters show up periodically, or maybe just once, do their part to move the story forward, and then leave. Some examples of minor characters could be the girl with the nice smile who sells you your coffee every morning, the man at the newspaper stand who sells you your morning paper. How about the serviceman who shows up to repair your internet? The woman who lives across the hall who you occasionally pass in the hallway. Mm. These are all considered minor characters, but remember, their function, their purpose for being is to move the story forward. It's not enough for them just to be there. They need to do something worthwhile to move your story. If they're doing nothing more than populating the setting, They are usually nameless and have no influence on the protagonist. These are called background characters. You've seen them, like a crowd of onlookers after a car crash. These would be background characters. If one of them comes forward and admits to seeing what happened, that character would be upgraded to a minor character. If the man who sells you your morning paper represents nothing more than that, then he isn't doing the job of a minor character. He isn't in any way aiding your protagonist. Therefore, he isn't moving the story forward unless there is something about his presence or actions that facilitate this. For example, let's say after faithfully selling the morning paper to your protagonist, one morning he hands him his paper, but with something along with it, a clue. This has now changed the scope of their relationship, and with this clue has sent the protagonist along a different path, one he wouldn't have taken if not for the fact that he received that clue from the newspaper man. Now, he can continue selling your protagonist his morning paper or simply disappear, never to be seen again. It doesn't matter. This minor character has now done what he was created to do. However slight, he helped to move the story forward. The repairman who shows up to repair your internet, if all he does is repair it and leave, he hasn't moved the story forward. The protagonist is still in the same place he was before the repairman arrived. But let's say this isn't your ordinary internet repairman. Let's say he was sent to the protagonist's house to install a device so his activities could be monitored. Eventually, the protagonist realizes his computer has been bugged, and that sends him on a journey to discover why. The minor character, the repairman, has done what he was created to do and helped to move the story forward. Remember the woman who lives across the hall from the protagonist? If nothing more happens than the occasional hi in passing, then she is nothing more than a background character. But let's suppose that one evening on his way home to his apartment, he finds her sitting in the hallway outside of her door. For the first time, a conversation ensues, and she explains that she can't find her key, and the office won't be open to give her a spare key until the next morning. As a good neighbor, he invites her in, and they sit up and talk until morning. Now, that alone doesn't move the story forward. She is still considered a background character because the conversation between the two of them has no bearing on the development of the story. Unless the story is about the two of them meeting or staying up all night causes your protagonist to do something like miss a meeting with an integral character. With either one of those two scenarios, she has fulfilled her role as a minor character because she has added to the progression of your story and helped to move it forward. But let's go further. Let's say the two scenarios didn't occur, but the protagonist and the woman continue to spend time together. Eventually, they start seeing each other romantically, and she becomes his love interest, spending more time in his apartment than in her own. That's totally fine. It happens a lot in stories. But because of this, she can no longer be considered a minor character. She is now a secondary character because she no longer shows up periodically to help to move the story forward. She is now fully interacting with the protagonist with the ability to greatly affect his actions. Let's go further. What if on the night the protagonist found her locked out of her apartment, it wasn't by mistake, but by design? She had planned it. She actually moved in across the hall so she could infiltrate his apartment. It turns out the repairman works for her. Like him, she is a spy trying to acquire vital information for her country. She is the best her country has to offer because there isn't anything she wouldn't do to get what her country needs. She's not just any secondary character, she's the antagonist. As you can see, there can be a fine line between a background character and a minor character, just like there can be a fine line between a minor character and a secondary character. It shows their importance and how vital they are to a story. Without minor characters, you would have to leap from a background character that has little more significance than populating the setting, like a crowd of people on a busy downtown street, to a jump to a secondary character that might very well be the antagonist that helps mold the course of your story. Without the minor character situated between these two types of characters, you lose a powerful element with the ability to create a seamless transition between the two when necessary. When creating your minor characters, keep their true purpose in mind. They must maintain the ability to help move your story forward, but without such an influence on your protagonist that they become more than you intend them to be. And now I'll continue with my little story I call I Have You Covered. After a long moment with all the other features of the face laughing uncontrollably, they finally settled down and listened to what the skin had to say. Telling you will only give you another reason to continue laughing, said the skin. So I'll just have to show you and I'll have your answer for you in the morning. So the tribunal ended for the evening, and later that night they went to sleep. In the morning, they woke to a startling discovery. During the night, the skin had curled itself up toward the forehead, and in doing so, left the mouth, the nose, and the eyes exposed to the elements. It was a very bright summer's morning with the sun beating down on the face without a single cloud in the sky to ease its penetration. Normally, this wouldn't have been an issue for the eyes, but with no skin to block out the sun, they remained exposed and eventually began to dry up. The nose soon realized that without the skin to produce the mucus that traps the germs that would otherwise affect it, without that protection, it dried up, became infected, and was unable to take in the required amount of air to the lungs. The mouth, now with two jobs, eating as well as breathing for the nose, was suddenly unable to do either. With no skin covering the lips of the mouth, they quickly dried up, and without the mucus that the skin had regularly provided, the mouth became dry, making it impossible to swallow. So no food was able to be digested, which caused the opening at the back of the throat to swell up, preventing any air from passing to the lungs. In the end, with dried up eyes, the one they served lost his ability to see. With the nose exposed to the elements, it had become infected and unable to function, and with no skin to shield the lips, tongue, and throat from these elements, they swelled up and also stopped functioning. As the one they served laid there dying, the other features of the face conceded to the fact that the skin, although seemingly insignificant, was the most important feature the face had. Thanks for watching, and if you found anything that I said beneficial to you in any way, hit that subscribe button because you never know. My next video might just be helpful too.